So Kimberley is a national sales manager at Boston Scientific. You began your career in the pharmaceutical space, specializing in products such as diabetes, then veterinary pharmaceuticals before moving into medtech, where you worked in recon and trauma, and now in a national sales manager position in deep brain stimulation. So I know a lot of our community here will be really interested to hear about your career pathway and moving product portfolios and what that was like. So I'll hand over to you. I'll just stop my screen share.
I'm going to share and then just double check that everyone can see what they should be seeing. Okay, how are we going there?
Perfect.
Awesome. So first of all, I'll just I'm quite relaxed. I'm very honest. I'm very transparent. I'm more than happy to be vulnerable and tell you when I didn't get things right. So any questions that I ask, I won't put on a facade. What you see is what you get. But Tara obviously gave a little bit of an introduction to who I am. I'd probably like to expand on that a little bit. I am so stuck inside this body who just turned 40 on the weekend. There is still the young woman who had a passion for med devices and medical industry, not just devices, but pharma, etc. Anything medical advances, really, or advances. I had no idea what I was doing 16, 17 years ago. All I knew was that I had a passion for this space. And fast forward to now, and I am now in a very fortunate position where I am a national leader for the deep brain stimulation team within neuromodulation for Boston Scientific. And I believe that I'm fortunate enough to be the leader of what I essentially think is the best deep brain stimulation team here in Australia. So I could go on forever and ever as to what my career has, and what has happened in my career, but I'll try and succinctly summarize it while also giving you a bit of a picture. So what you can see here is way back in 2006, I was essentially given an opportunity as a rookie rep in a specialist hybrid role in central nervous system with a Danish pharmaceutical company called Lundbeck. I was with them right through to pretty much 2012. There was some global financial crisis, some major redundancies, and essentially, unfortunately, my time with Lundbeck finished prematurely. I probably would still be there potentially if that hadn't have happened. Moved on to Novo Nordisk, another Danish pharmaceutical company, then decided to move back into a marketing role, but this is a little bit different. So this might look erratic to you, my career adventure, as I've called it, but they actually are quite complementary roles, and I have leveraged my skills that I've learned in each position to move into the next. So with Durox, it was an Australian veterinary pharmaceutical company specialising in anaesthesia, analgesia, and cardiorespiratory drugs. So I was able to go back into a marketing role with that particular company. Then I decided, you know what, I actually want to go back to the human world, which for anyone that's worked in marketing in medtech or pharmaceutical would probably think I'm crazy, because as we all know, the human industry is regulated quite closely. The veterinary industry is not, so you've got a lot of freedom. So to want to come back into the human devices or human space is a little bit crazy, but I essentially wanted to get back to the human side. So this is where I decided, you know what, it's time to progress from pharmaceutical into devices. So I was very fortunate to be given an opportunity with Smith & Nephew in recon and trauma. I then went on to specialise just in trauma orthopedics. And this is where I'll start to paint the picture, because contrary to what you might think, I am actually going to ask the audience some questions, and I do expect some responses. So if the audience goes crickets, the other presenters have to bail me out and answer this. But I'll paint the picture. Smith & Nephew, whole new portfolio. As William mentioned, learning new spaces is daunting sometimes. So I went into trauma, ended up being quite successful, had fantastic relationships with registrars who are now consultants and still friends of mine, knew my portfolio really well, got runs on the board. I was setting myself up to have a very lucrative chapter ahead with securing tenders, etc. my bonus for that 12 months ahead was going to be nothing short but smashing. Yet I decided when someone came along and said, hey, there's a job in neuromodulation. Now, just to stop you there, I had no idea at that point what neuromodulation was. Obviously, I did my due diligence, etc., before the interview, but someone came knocking and said, hey, there's this great role in neuromodulation, super exciting space in tech, it's ever evolving, super innovative. Do you want to go for it? Now, I'm in a space where essentially it's like an old pair of socks. I was really comfortable, I was doing really well, and the money was going to be good. Now, my question to you is, would you move? If you had that nice, comfy pair of socks and it was going to be a ripper 12 months ahead, would you move? So I just want to pause for a moment and let people put some comments in the chat. Obviously, there'll be people here with different backgrounds to mine, but knowing what I've just said, does anyone want to put something in the chat, or do the presenters want to, help me out there?
Just answer it.
Yeah, you can answer it. Go for it.
Yeah, I was in a similar position. I wasn't in the previous role for a long time, but I was getting comfortable in that role, selling hospital consumables, and I was hitting up tenders, and I actually moved into this current role that I'm now in imaging technology. So I did make that move. So yes, I would do that because I've done that just like yourself. So if it's something that you're passionate about and you're progressing, and like the other presenters have said, get comfortable being uncomfortable, 100% I should move.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to say whether I was crazy or not? Yeah, most don't grow in the comfortable. Exactly. And look, don't get me wrong, there were a lot of unknowns. I did my due diligence. I figured out what neuromodulation was, probably a good idea before interview process. And it started to excite me somewhat. So my next question is, it was probably redundant. I've moved from ortho to neuromod. It was the best decision I've made. I love the space. Yeah. Good answer. And if you wouldn't move, why wouldn't you move? And look, if I think back to myself, then I was well within my rights to walk away from that opportunity, because I would still be successful. I would have still have kicked goals. So I guess the question is, why did I move? And for me, it was more than just about a role. And this is what I'll talk a bit about now. So you need to decide if it's the right choice for me. And essentially, for me, if you're looking for career progression, you need to look beyond that actual role. So even beyond the role that you're interviewing for, and think, is it the right company for me? Is it the right culture for me? Is it the right environment for me? Depending on what you're trying to achieve. And this is where I sort of ask you, do you know what your values are? And some people do and some people don't. And I will be completely honest and say, probably only in the last 5 years or so could I actually tell you what those were. Now, I pulled this is actually from my CV. It's still 100% relevant. This was from my executive summary. And this was basically me defining my goals and what I was seeking out. So when that role came up in neuromodulation, I wasn't actually looking for a role. I was very comfortable and doing well. But I still had this in my CV. And so highly motivated, dedicated, ensuring both personal and company success. So I would define that as high performing, looking to join a team of goal-orientated professionals. So, collaborative people is another value. Solution focus, again, collaborative, results driven, high performance, and quality without compromising on quality or ethics. So for me, that is really, really important. So the younger version of me, if I had been in the audience on this call, I probably would have screenshot that and thought, hey, that's a really good one. I'm going to include that in my CV. But I cannot encourage you enough to try and define what your values are. So question, and you don't have to put what they are, but I'd be really interested to see if you do know what your own personal values are, and do a thumbs up or a comment in the chat. But more importantly, can you succinctly recall them? So if someone dialed you up and said, look, what's really important to you? What are your values? Can you actually recall them? And this isn't easy to do, especially if you're younger in your career and you haven't had roles within industry. It's actually quite hard to define. So for me, self-awareness is key. That comes sometimes with age, maturity, but I also think you can really get a lot of self-awareness when you put some time in for reflection. You can start, if you don't know what your values are and you think, good God, I don't even know how to start narrowing this down, start thinking about what you don't align with. Think about, it doesn't even have to be companies. It can be in a social situation, the things that you don't feel comfortable with, that you don't think are right up your alley. Then once you can eliminate those that you don't align with, you can start thinking about what drives you to get out of bed in the morning, what makes you, passionate, what, you need to be really honest with yourself. So the reason why I talk about values, and the reason why I talk about that off the back of me making the decision to leave what it was a very successful and comfortable role, is again thinking about beyond the actual role itself. So for me, career progression was important. I wanted to move into leadership eventually at some point. And so when I went through this interview process with Boston Scientific, for me, the standout was the company values. Now, I would definitely work for companies before where the values of the company are on a pull-up banner in HR, and that's about where they go. They don't move further than that. But I've equally worked for companies, and Boston Scientific most certainly is one of them, where those values are genuinely lived and breathed. So I'm going to pop up here. So the company values for Boston Scientific, and this is probably why you can see I had that aha moment through the interview process. So these are all of them. So caring, meaningful innovation, high performance, global collaboration, diversity, and winning spirit. And I can hand on my heart say that everything that was said to me during the interview process about those values is genuinely lived and breathed in I'd say 95% of the individuals working within the company. But I highlighted the ones that were in bold because they matched mine straight off the bat. So if you pull up my little blurb again, high performance, global collaboration, winning spirit, I was like, well, that's me. It's like a match made in heaven. Then you look at the other values and I'm like, yeah, caring. I mean, that's why I want to do this job, is I'm interested in changing people's lives. The innovation piece, I don't think until I worked in, and until I learned more about the neuromod space, I didn't actually realize how innovative medtech can be. And then the diversity, we've already spoken about that with one of the previous presenters, that that's such an incredibly important space. So all of them, I was like, yeah, okay, it's more than just a role. This is bigger. This is bigger. Challenges, you're going to laugh at this. So I don't know how many of you on the call here have a science or mathematics background. I can tell you that I certainly do not. And my background is definitely business. My background is definitely marketing. So sales, marketing, business, that's where my education lies. So challenges moving into the neuromod role. So you, again, paint the picture, kicking goals, know my portfolio, really onto it. People are looking at me within the team for advice constantly. I was not an expert in my field, but I was certainly one of the more senior for the portfolios that I was looking after. Now, fast forward, I get the role at Boston Scientific. I sit down with the senior field clinical engineer, who I've nicknamed the unicorn. And he says to me, he's like, okay, right, Kimberley, how were you at a year 11 and 12 algebra? And I thought, oh, good God, what have I done? What on earth have I done? Because I can tell you now, year 11 and 12 algebra most certainly was not one of my strong subjects. But, so wrapping my head around the new, and William was talking about, again, learning stuff. You can learn things. This, by hands down, was the most technical space that I've ever had to wrap my head around. Boston Scientific have 90% pass marks, no excuses, it's expected. We work with neurosurgeons. That's absolutely understandable. But you can imagine walking into this space and going, right, okay, this is what I have to get my head around. And needless to say, although challenging, I can tell you now, was it worth it? 110%. Absolutely. I do it time and time again. This space is the most rewarding, most valuable space that I could ever work in. Sure, there's others, but so far I've yet to find someone who can challenge that. So definitely worth moving out of those comfortable pair of socks and into something that scared the living bejesus out of me. So I'll fast forward to what my key learnings have been. So career progression, changing portfolios. Know what your values are. I cannot emphasize that enough. And if you don't know what they are, spend some time investing in yourself to find out what they are, because it's more than just a role that you're going for. It's already been mentioned tonight, Charlotte, in regards to having a group of key mentors. Have your tribe. They're the people you can go to who can give you a completely objective opinion on a situation, unemotional. If you have mentors that you start now with, they will be with you for your whole career and they know you through and through. Assess, is this the right fit for me? And I really believe this, that the interview process is just as much as it is for you as it is for the hiring company. It has to be the right fit for both parties. Find something that interests you. When I do interviews, the poor candidates, they probably think I've drank the Kool-Aid, because deep brain stimulation and neuromodulation excites me so much. So find something that interests you. I can't speak for everyone, but I can say that I certainly can't make myself passionate about something, and I'll be open and honest. When I went into diabetes and endocrinology with Novo Nordisk, I thought, I don't know if this interests me, but let me give it a crack. It didn't. I tried. I really did. And it really will be interesting to other people. I totally accept that. But for me, that wasn't for me. And so I learned very quickly I can't make myself be passionate about something. Sometimes the grass isn't always greener, and that's really important too, because there are so many opportunities out there. And I'm saying go for it. Don't even think twice. Well, hopefully you don't think that's what I'm saying, but I am saying get outside of your comfort zone. But just remember, the grass isn't always greener. So you need to do your due diligence. You need to know when it's time to walk away and go, you know what, maybe this opportunity isn't for me. It's not the right time, or there's just a few things that don't seem right. It's okay. It's okay to walk away from opportunities. And remember, it's not just about the role. I've said that multiple times. What else can the company offer you? I'm very fortunate at Boston Scientific. Yes, I put the hard yards in as a territory manager, moved into a field sales manager role, and now I'm national sales manager. But I did my time. I did my time in the field. I showed my value. I got runs on the board, and then I was given the opportunity for development and leadership training. So they're my key learnings. So feel free to screenshot that one if you want. But I believe it's on the recording, so you can go back. And this is where the slides align shortly. Actually, sorry, bring it all together. So again, just remembering that role that was super comfortable, I was doing really well in, didn't even know what neuromodulation was, is the best thing that's probably happened in my career. So yeah, very fortunate. So glad I did it. This is the same slide as Charlotte had, and this is why Tara told us as the presenters there was some overlap. Get outside of your comfort zone. It's where the magic happens. You know, I turned 40 on Saturday, so I can say I'm old and wise now. But genuinely, that applies to any stage of life. Definitely jump out of your comfort zone. You won't regret it.